Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Bloom, Group Publisher of Roofing Contractor, Walls and Ceilings, and Building Enclosure. And whether you're listening or watching, it's going to be a great day. We've got lots to cover today. I'm honored to be joined with Trent Cotney, partner of Adams and Reese. Trent, thank you so much for joining me.
Jill, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, we were just talking before we went on, and there's definitely a lot of things that have been going on since we talked last. There's two things I want to cover with everybody today that are really important for all contractors to know. But the first and foremost is let's talk about collections for a minute and liens. What do contractors need to know? It looks like you've had a lot of activity this week when it comes to that topic.
Yeah, and I think it's a sign of the times, Jill. One of the things that we're really seeing is a pickup in phone calls and emails related to customers either slow paying or not paying. And what that's caused contractors to do is really focus on their accounts receivable and their collection activities. So as part of that, we always try to approach it in a phase by phase approach. We can send a demand letter, we can do various things, but one of the critical things that contractors always want to do is make sure that they have secured their lien rights. Now, Jill, in every single state, there are different laws and rules as it relates to, how to perfect a claim of lien. And for those of you that don't know, the claim of lien is like a mortgage and your contract is like a promissory note. That's how I always look at it. So the claim of lien acts as security on that property that you improved. So it's important because, if somebody files bankruptcy or if you've got a foreclosure or anything else, that's a secured interest, and it's more more valuable than an unsecured breach of contract claim. So one of the things that we want to make sure that our contractors are doing are getting those preliminary notices out, making sure that they're watching their timing on their lien claims, make sure that they're recording the right type of documents. It's very important because it can be the difference between you getting paid and not getting paid. And like I said, before this call started, Jill, is we've had 15 requests in the last week alone. So I think this is only going to continue. More and more contractors are starting to see the impacts of our current economy.
So is there something that contractors should have initially when they give the contract to their customer, that the lien should already be written in the fine print?
Yeah, so it's great that you mentioned that. There's a lot of states that actually require that kind of notice to be given. In Florida, for example, Chapter 713 requires that a notice be included in the contract if you're doing residential work. It actually says that if you don't pay me, I'm going to lien your property, right? Other states have similar functions, but I think it's a good idea to explain and provide that notice, that preliminary notice saying, hey, if we don't get paid, we're going to lien you. Even if it's not necessarily required, you want to educate your customer so that in the event you do have to do something, it's not a surprise.
Yeah, sounds great. And so is it important to, some contractors I've heard in the past they don't take a deposit at all up front. What do you recommend when it comes to payment? Should all contractors typically always get some sort of deposit on all jobs? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so, my dad has given me a lot of sage advice over the years. And one of the things he told me was it's the customers you don't take that make you a successful business. Don't be afraid to ask for money. Times have changed. You're not a bank for your customer. You're not a bank for the general contractor. Get paid up front, ask for a deposit, ask for a materials deposit, make sure that you've got some money in hand before you start work, because you're gambling on the fact that you're going to get paid after your work's done. And 9 times out of 10, that might work, but all it takes is a few right in a row and you're in real trouble. So definitely think about your payment terms, get some of that payment up front, structured in a way where you're getting as much as you can before project completion.
Very good advice. Our dads always have good advice, no doubt about it. So the second thing we were just talking about, Trent, which clearly is also very important, was what do contractors need to know about when they have workers working remote? And I think you said wage and hour was something.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is real interesting, Jill. We get calls all the time for any type of legal issue you can imagine. And recently we've had at least 2 or 3 calls in the last couple of weeks from contractors that are using remote workers that are away. They could be office staff or marketing or sales or whatever it might be. And a lot of different issues have come up. So one of the things I really recommend is that you spell out remote work very as clear as possible in a policy, and you want to make it, easy to be able to track their hours. There are a lot of programs and software that allow you to do this. You also want to be very careful and make sure they understand that, let's say you are based in New Mexico and you've hired somebody to work remote in Arizona. Okay, you've hired them to work in Arizona. Arizona law probably applies to their employment situation. But if they decide to take a month off and go to California, you want to make it clear that they're not allowed to do that without permission, and regardless, Arizona law is going to apply. Okay. And the reason I say that is you start getting into all these issues and you've got people moving all over the place. You may end up with some unfavorable employment law that you have to deal with because someone just decided to take, a month and move somewhere else. So the key message here, Jill, is take the time to really focus on your policies dealing with remote work. It's a great strategy for a lot of contractors to employ, but be careful because you don't have the same kind of oversight that you do if they're in the home office.
So is that different for somebody who's physically hands-on doing a crew member rather than an administrative person, or is it kind of all fall under the same umbrella?
Well, it's going to be different, right? So you may have, let's say you've got a crew of 10 that do, commercial roofs, and they may travel from place to place wherever you put them up, right? Well, clearly
Sure.
You're directing them to go wherever they need to go, but they're not staying there for, ideally they're not staying there for a prolonged period of time. They're project specific, right? And then they report back to the home office where everything is situated. That's different than if you've got someone who lives elsewhere, that's where they're located. That's all they do 24 hours a day is, classic example is marketing. Could be, AR or accounts payable. It could be, it could be remote sales, calls, things like that. That's where I see the majority of the problems is office admin when it relates to remote work, not crew. That tends to be there are a lot of issues there, but it just tends to be different issues.
Got it. So if I'm a marketing person and like we talked a little bit about earlier, and I'm like, hey, I've got a home in Hawaii. I'm just going to go work there for the month. What issues does that create when they just move from one place to another temporarily to do their work?
So what you want to do is you want to spell out in the policy that where their place of work is, right? And if they are leaving to go work somewhere else, I'm not talking about vacation because vacation is different than work.
Sure.
If they're going to work somewhere else, they've got to give notice. And Hawaii is a great example. Hawaii, California, they've got very liberal employee favorable laws compared to other states, right? So you may be in one state, let's say they're working in Nebraska or Texas or somewhere like that, and they decide to, without telling you, to go work from Hawaii for a month. If there's an employee related claim or an issue, it is possible that Hawaii law may govern rather than Texas law. And that can be vastly different. So it's very important to spell all that out in your policy, where they are supposed to work, that they're not allowed to work elsewhere, right? They can take vacations if they want to take time off, God bless them. But you got to spell all this out. And that's where you start getting into trouble with it. Anytime there's any ambiguity, Jill, that's when, unfortunately, you got to call people like me. So
absolutely. Well, Trent, it's always great insight. It's always good to talk to you. And if anybody has any questions for you, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. You reach out to me anytime. You can email me at trent.cotney@arlaw.com.
Sounds great. And if anybody has any questions for us, it's roofingcontractor.com, wconline.com, or buildingenclosureonline.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for all our free content. But most importantly, hope everyone's having a great summer. And we look forward to talking to everybody soon. Thanks again, Trent.